April 14th, 1912. A night that echoes through history. A night of celebration, of luxury, and of a ship believed to be invincible. The Titanic was more than just a ship. It was a symbol of progress, a marvel of human ingenuity. Yet as the frigid waters of the Atlantic Ocean swallowed her whole, the world was left questioning, how? How did the unsinkable Titanic become the greatest maritime tragedy in history? Was it simply fate, or is there more to this story than we've been told? The ship, a floating palace. In 1909, the construction of the RMS Titanic began at the Harland and Wolff shipyard in Belfast, Ireland. Over 882 feet long and weighing more than 46,000 tons, she was, without question, the largest and most luxurious vessel of her time. But beyond the splendor, Titanic was seen as a triumph of modern engineering. Her builders, led by naval architect Thomas Andrews, boasted about her watertight compartments, 16 in total. They believed that even if some were breached, the ship would still stay afloat. But here's where the first mystery begins. Was the Titanic truly unsinkable, or had her creators been blinded by hubris? It's said that only the highest quality materials were used, but wait. Some historians question whether cheaper, more brittle steel and weak iron rivets were used in certain parts of the ship. Could the seeds of disaster have been planted long before she ever set sail? The maiden voyage, a journey doomed from the start? On April 10, 1912, the Titanic set off on her maiden voyage. Destination, New York City. On board were some of the richest, most powerful people in the world: John Jacob Astor, Benjamin Guggenheim, Isidor Straus, and over 700 third-class passengers, many of them emigrants, chasing the American dream. First-class accommodations? They were unrivaled. The wealthy dined in lavish halls, strolled along the decks, bathed in luxury, completely confident that this voyage was one of absolute safety. After all, this was the unsinkable Titanic. But while the passengers enjoyed the luxury, something ominous was brewing. For days, the Titanic had received multiple warnings, icebergs ahead, and yet the ship kept pushing forward, nearly at full speed. Why? Was Captain Edward Smith under pressure from the White Star Line to arrive early? Was this a fatal misjudgment? The iceberg. A collision or something more? April 14th, 11:40 p.m. The lookouts, Frederick Fleet and Reginald Lee, spotted something terrifying. "Iceberg right ahead!" Fleet shouted, but it was too late. Despite their efforts to steer clear, the Titanic grazed the iceberg, the massive hull scraping along the jagged ice. But here's where the mystery deepens. Official reports say the iceberg tore open the starboard side, flooding 5 watertight compartments. But survivors claim to have heard something different. A muffled explosion deep inside the ship. Was it just the impact, or was there something else happening? Some researchers today believe a fire had been smoldering in the coal bunkers for days before the crash, weakening the ship's structure. Could this fire have made the ship even more vulnerable when it hit the iceberg? The inevitable sinking, chaos, and heroism. As the Titanic's bow dipped into the freezing Atlantic, the truth became horrifyingly clear. There weren't enough lifeboats. How could that be? The ship could carry over 2,200 passengers and crew, but lifeboats were only enough for about 1,178. Why? Regulations at the time were outdated, based on the ship's tonnage, not the number of passengers. A tragic oversight, or just pure arrogance? Then came the moment no one wanted to face: panic. People began scrambling for the lifeboats, desperate to survive. But amidst the chaos, there were moments of incredible heroism. Wireless operators Jack Phillips and Harold Bride stayed behind, sending out distress signals until the very last moment. The band? Yes, they kept playing, music to soothe the terrified souls on board, and the passengers. Many men stepped aside, knowing they would never leave the ship, all to give women and children a chance to escape. But despite their bravery, over 1,500 people perished in those icy waters. 1,500 lives. Aftermath. The search for answers. The world was in shock. The unsinkable Titanic. Gone. How? Investigations were launched, and the blame game began. Was Captain Smith at fault? Did he ignore the warnings? Or was the White Star Line pushing for speed over safety? And here's a chilling thought. Could the tragedy have been avoided? Some believe it could have. Imagine this. The lookouts in the crow's nest didn't have binoculars that night because they were locked away. Locked away. How different could things have been if they'd had those binoculars? Discovery. Titanic's final resting place. For over 70 years, the Titanic lay hidden, lost to the depths of the Atlantic. Then, in 1985, a breakthrough. Dr. Robert Ballard discovered the wreck, over 12,000 feet beneath the surface. What he found stunned the world. The ship wasn't intact as many had hoped. It was broken in two. The debris field stretched across the ocean floor, and it looked like a graveyard, frozen in time. Legacy. Lessons from the Titanic. The sinking of the Titanic changed everything. Maritime laws were rewritten. More lifeboats, stricter safety regulations, and the creation of the International Ice Patrol. But beyond the laws, beyond the changes, the Titanic's story resonates with something deeper, something human. It's about our drive to conquer nature, to push the limits of possibility, to believe we can build something truly invincible. And yet, in the face of nature's power, no ship, no matter how advanced, is ever truly unsinkable. The Titanic stands as a haunting reminder of that truth. And so, the Titanic rests at the bottom of the Atlantic. But her story, it still lives. Was it all a series of tragic coincidences? Or does the mystery of the Titanic reveal deeper truths about ambition, about human fragility, about the forces we can't control? We may never know for sure, but one thing is certain. The Titanic will forever captivate the imagination of the world.